It's greetings. I don't have much time, so I'm going to give you the English presentation of the project. And this is in English to really present the structure, and the intellectual underpinning for the project. The one that we did in Spanish was to show CCSR in action and what kind of barriers you have to overcome to get to our objectives. Sometimes you have to learn a language to win over people who speak that language. So that was CCSR in action. And the other one in Danish had to do with my identity, that's my history, but also because I need to weigh in on a current socioeconomic debate that's happening in Denmark at the moment in the vernacular. And you have to, that kind of like also adds to a narrative, or kind of like we said, dissolves a negative narrative by actually being black and Rasta and taking part in such a high level discussion with that input, which is also another important fact of CCSR. But like I said, this one has to do with intellectual underpinning for it, and that goes really way back, probably goes back into challenging all the interactions between Africa and the rest of the world. So that takes you right back to ancient trade, and it takes you right back to slavery and colonialism and apartheid and all those things. But anyway, so we're looking at 2001, 2003, I get to read that paper, and I respond because the leadership of Africa has asked the people of Africa to create these platforms for public participation, and that's the whole idea. I'm going to Africa. So by 2004, I made up my mind that I'm going to walk from Cape Town to Cairo, and I let the news go out. By the end of 2004, Lester Holloway gets a press release from me, and he's the editor of New Nation magazine, New Nation newspaper, a weekly. There used to be The Voice, and there used to be the New Nation in London. And he gets Colleen Harris to write an article on me. And to my surprise, the response is really positive from the entire community, and I realized that I can build something, so I take time out to really build it. That's 2005, the 1990 Trust, again through Lester Holloway. They host me, they give me a desk, and they give me a phone, access to the phone, which is difficult in those days. This way before people had Wi-Fi. So being in an office with a desk and access to internet and a computer was crucial. Otherwise, I'd have to go to the internet cafes around London, and they were expensive. They were about £1.30 an hour, or £1 sometimes for half an hour, and that kind of thing. Didn't have that kind of money. I'd have to go busking on the street to get the money and pay my rent and blah 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 blah. So anyway, a 1990 Trust, really, thanks so much, and that will be Lee Jasper. Thanks to Lee. All right, so Karen Chuhan was head at that time, and many other people I can name. It was a very interesting time around the time they were getting ready to, just a lot of things. I could tell you stories. Cheryl Seeley and everybody could tell you stories too. Anyway, so by 2006, I finish what I'm doing in London, and then I go to Barcelona. And to Barcelona, really what happens then is my mind opens up to other possibilities, and all the different possibilities of what can be done and how it can be done. The whole environment in Barcelona is less hectic than London. The weather is so much better, and my mind, I get to party more and to think more, and to basically just spread out my ideas. That's where the whole Big Spliff comes. The Big Spliff, the movie, comes in, and many ideas, and that all happens in Barcelona. And I learn Spanish, of course, and I get great support from the reggae community there. How many minutes? 3 minutes. You can read it off. It's not a history lesson, but it's kind of like so. By 2007, I hit Africa. 2007, I'm trying to walk from Cape Town to Cairo. It fails. But 2008, I come back to Barcelona, and by that time, I've joined Facebook, and that's what this whole thing is about. I joined Facebook in November 2007, or maybe October 2007. By November 23, 2007, I was back in Barcelona, and I went to the village of Valls, and I stayed there and went back to Barcelona again, and the whole of that time was building Facebook platform. I realized what a tool Facebook was, and I started to utilize that as a tool to make as many platforms for public participation as possible. So I got hundreds of them. Some of them, just whatever idea came up, I just put it on Facebook. I made a group and whatever, and tried to get that. So that's also around the time that we got the idea of the $10 billion plan. I'm not really sure how that came about, but really I could see that in order to make any kind of change, the poor people in Africa would have to think in terms of bigger budgets. that the smaller the budget you thought you would, when you plan in small budget, you remain in poverty. But if you get together and plan big budgets, then you pull yourself out of poverty. So I thought to myself that $10 billion was probably the best place to start. And that was the whole idea, and became a song, and we started building the concept later on. By 2010, I was in Africa again. And by 2013, I'd spent enough time in Africa and looking at the dynamics in my village in Malawi to come up with ideas and see what things work and what things don't work. Where do NGOs fail? What do they need to do to become better? And all those type of things. That was actually the core of developing. At that time, we called it Smile Africa. There was an organization called Smile Africa. By the time I got to Cape Town to begin walking, Smile Africa kind of like faded. No, it really didn't fade, but then the whole idea to come up with a different approach ended up being CCSR, Comprehensive Corporate Social Responsibility. And that's where it was born, in Cape Town. So for 9 months I was in Cape Town, and that's why I call it the mother city, because like a baby's in the mother for 9 months. I was in Cape Town for 9 months and getting this whole thing together. So we're not doing a history lesson, so let's just get into the relevance of what CCSR. CCSR, without going too deep into it, you can work out its Comprehensive Corporate Social Responsibility. It is based on land value taxation, a value that I got to learn in London in 2005 by chance, which was really cool. And then on top of that, we got Cool Mom Records. That would be the vehicle for generating cash and excitement and information. That's the record company. And so having those three things put together, CCSR, Land Value Tax, Cool Mom Records, that will produce the $10 billion plan. And that's what actually I'm inviting everybody to come and take part. But we had to kind of make I started finding people to fill different posts for $10 billion plan. And the idea at that time, the idea was to challenge the World Bank, to say that, look, you're the World Bank, you have money, you say you want to develop Africa. We as the people have come together and we have decided that this is what we want to do. So we challenge you, and you need to pay us for that. So the whole premise was we wanted to create jobs, and we needed the World Bank to pay those jobs, just a second, to pay those jobs. And that is what the whole point was at the time. It failed because, again, don't tell a history story. That failed because of organizational problems. Let's just put it that way. All right. And but I did not fail. I stayed with it. I stuck with it, and I kept on working. I kept on working for a long time. Up until now, I'm still working with it. So some people have left. Some people have stopped believing, but I'm still with it 100%. And where we've come to now with the $10 billion plan is what we're presenting on this website at the moment. And we're about to step out on a line that is in between Danida, the Danish development agency, and which actually paid my parents schooling, which paid my schooling, my parents' salary throughout my childhood, my schooling, my sister's schooling, and everything. That was Danida that paid for that. Again, with many projects in Africa, again, many of them did not really succeed as they should have. So I'm caught up in between the failures of Danida and the failures of NEPAD, and we got this $10 billion plan that's basically going to reach out to both of them. That's kind of like the line of activity that I'm calling you into at the moment right here. And also we're going to be creating, again, we haven't changed salaries. Definitely salaries is so important. We have to get into the national budgets of the development agency or of the foreign ministry in Denmark, and whether it is DFID in England, wherever they may be. If it's Peace Corps or whatever in America, we need to get into those budgets and say, look, whoever's funding those ones, you need to shift that into these jobs that we are creating here, because these jobs are best based on an intellectual underpinning that is valid, because we have gone in and looked and pinpointed where things work or where things don't work because of differences in culture, and especially culture. The crucial thing about this is that, should I jump into that now? Yeah, maybe you should jump into that right now, so that again we can say why it is important. Because you do remember there was the whole campaign in 2005 called Make Poverty History, and that was the environment in which that I was finishing off in London before going to Barcelona. And the whole thing culminated with a conference up in Glen Eagles, and at Glen Eagles, Make Poverty History, and there were actually two parts. Make Poverty History, there was the realists, and they're the ones who were trying to sell, you know, the dream or the image of success. Unfortunately, the famous people who were involved, Bob Geldof and Bono and other people, and with Tony Blair and their team, they tried to sell off a success, which obviously is not a success, because Africa is worse off now than it was in 2005, and that was supposed to be the end of poverty in Africa. Anyway, I was of NEPAD, and NEPAD was a vision, and it was based on reviewing the entire narrative of Africa meets the West, and that had a very strong, and still is a very strong, intellectual underpinning for any movement, if you were to make any movement for Africa, right? So now this would have been the platform that Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and anybody who wanted to meet Africa should have come and met us within the parameters of NEPAD. That did not happen. Instead, Tony Blair, after suffering that political defeat of making war against Iraq and everything, at the convention, the Labour convention after that attack on Iraq, declared that, oh, there's so many things that they need to do, and then say, oh, but look at Africa, Africa's still suffering, so why don't we blah, 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 blah. So I was like, you, what? You want to reinvent yourself in Africa? Everybody goes to Africa to reinvent themselves. So that's why I said to myself, well, I'm going to reinvent myself and go to Africa. If everybody's doing that, well, I'm going to do it too. I'm from there, so let me go to Africa and reinvent myself. So you see, out of that came the Commission for Africa with Tony Blair and Bob Geldof, and then came the whole Do They Know It's Christmas a second time, and the whole regurgitation of that thing, and you just look at yourself and say, where does it end? So that was the roots of mine. Now I need to, then I was really committed to walking from Cape to Cairo, because now we need to hit back at these people with this narrative that they are. We need to go grassroots, and we need to get the people together and then build from the ground and stand up strong and say we meet our leaders where we're supposed to meet our leaders, right? So that would be the confrontation with colonialism, slavery, apartheid, which all of it just basically boils down into racism. If you look about structures of how you're going to deal with these, then those are the dynamics and those are the realities that you're going to be facing. The legacies of colonialism, slavery, apartheid all boil down to racism, basically. That's what makes it work. So you would have to have a certain amount of tools for that. And obviously the tools would be economics, a good understanding of economics, how it works, you know. And then within economics, we'd have to be working with land value taxation, because that's the way that we actually challenge the economics. That's how we would challenge neoclassical economics. And then the objective would have to be the environment, because that's how we make sure that there is no partiality. That's how we make sure that we're not racist or culturalist or supremacist, but that we actually care for all people, black, white, brown, yellow, whoever they may be, because the environment is our home. So that led to the tools. These would be the tools to combat racism. And we also had a spiritual element to it, which is Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. That is basically to get all churches and all religions on board in that way. So traveling to the Ark of the Covenant was very important as well, as a Rasta, to base that. And then that is what actually becomes the $10 billion plan of today. So within all of those different things, there's so many little areas of specialization, and each one of them would need to be explained so that it would be presented, and then you'd have to have graphics made for it, you'd have to have websites made for it, campaigns, and you had to imagine all those things. I could not get a team because my team broke down in 2013, but I kept on pushing without a team. I started walking barefoot because I hadn't gotten the money that I needed for my shoes, and the other shoes that I had were not for walking, so I started walking barefoot, and that was supported by different people. And now in 2021, I can safely say that we have something to present to you, and I'm glad to. So the next video is about what we got to present to you here in 2021. Blessed Heights.